Okay. Welcome to Contalk, where we discuss everything about the construction world, the high-tech world, and everything in between. My name is Dmitry, and my co-host here with me is Victor. Today we are joined by Ilia Spitserov from Swap. Ilia is a BIM developer from Swap. And so tell us about yourself, Ilia. How did you become a BIM developer and what led you to this path?
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Um, so I'm basically an architect. Yeah. Some would say an
Basically,
Yeah,
modest.
yeah. That's what I am. I'm trained as an architect. I learned. I had my BA degree and BR degree actually in the Technion. I had my master's in Tel Aviv University. Some would say ex-architect, but I don't know whether it's something you stop being.
Very cool. Yeah.
I've been working as an architect in architecture bureaus for quite some time, since 2005. Prior to, yeah.
So we saw at your CV that you worked at Isha Architects. Isha Architects is one of the most known architects in Israel.
Yeah, I did for some time. Yeah.
So some quite amazing projects there. Do you have any favorite project that you worked on?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't part of like the most exciting stuff they do, and I was fairly young back then. I was just a beginner, so I was doing a lot of drudgery and a lot of technical work. Not the most exciting stuff, and this kind of experience, which it was repeating itself in every office I was working at. So this kind of experience sort of moved me into automation problems, because as exciting and glamorous as an architect's life may look, it's far from that. Because 90% of the time you do really boring, repetitive, dumb, I would say, technical work. And the other 10% you do, licensing, permits, working with authorities. So I think that architecture is one of those fields where there's a huge, really a colossal gap between how the discipline is perceived, its public image, and what it really is. Not to mention the salaries, right? So yeah.
What is the gap, basically? I'm just curious, what is the gap between what you thought you'll do during the university times to what you actually did? Because like in the university, at least for me, I was like myself, I'll be like, I learned construction. So I'm a civil engineer on construction. So I thought I'll be like designing the most amazing buildings and give the most amazing concepts. But eventually, when you begin, you just basically do beams, just calculate the iron.
Yeah.
That was at least my perception. How was it for you?
So yeah, as an architecture student, and even before that, I'm one of those people who kind of knew I'm going to be an architect from very early age. That's what I wanted to do, really. Like since I was, I don't know, 9 or 10, I loved building models, and I loved constructing and inventing stuff. So architecture was pretty natural for me. So as a student, you do those really over the top projects. You do museums, and you do conceptual stuff with very broad brushstrokes, let's put it this way. And you're not constrained in terms of you're not legally constrained, for sure. And nothing of what you do is meant to be built. So
It was much more relief to give those projects away.
Yeah, so the like the execution, the construction side is in architecture schools is usually just it's just put aside, it's just ignored. Um, what you do learn, which is very important in the professional life of an architect, and I think in like adult life generally, is to receive criticism, sometimes very harsh criticism, and the architectural schools are notorious for being, for like breaking people, like breaking you up, because until you're uh, until you're an academia student, you've never been working that hard, not in high school, like nowhere.
Yeah,
So so you're having these sleepless nights, and you're working your hands to the bone, and then you bring the product. You're extremely proud of it, and you're emotionally attached, and you bring it to the studio, and it's just torn apart.
yeah.
Uh,
I don't think it's quite harsh in the construction one, but I believe in the architectural one's much more. There's much more criticism because it's like design, it's like concept.
yeah,
It's,
yeah. Yeah, so
cool.
a lot of stuff is just, it's a matter of personal opinion. Like a certain studio teacher can like what you did, someone else can hate it. Yeah, so there's a lot of personal opinion in this, and you sort of learn not to get too attached to stuff you do. You become more of a problem solver, and you learn to be efficient. So this is like an important mental skill that you do acquire when you study, because architecture is a very cyclical and iterative process. You never get anything right away. You do a lot of iterations. You go through a lot of phases until you have a complete product. And at every phase, there's a lot of criticism, which is, in the real life, in the industry, unlike in architecture school, yeah, is very business oriented, and people pay money for building what you drew. Um, but eventually, as a young architect, what you do like 90% of the time is just drudgery, just construction documents. uh, Construction documents is a huge chunk of architect's work, and you're being thrown back to the drawing board all the time after.
Detailing and everything. Yeah. What was the most like absurd thing that the client asked for? Like move a tree, like trim a tree. Like what was like the thing that you thought to yourself during your work time?
Like the most absurd thing.
Because I know the clients in construction when they can be quite demanding.
Yeah. Well, to ignore a handicap regulation, and
Oh,
people with disabilities, they need to have
yeah,
ramps and toilets.
of course.
So I was yeah, there was this one time I was asked just to ignore regulations for the disabled, because it was a fancy commercial project, and they said we don't even want to be associated with disability.
Okay.
True story. Yeah, happens.
Gosh.
uh yeah, so yeah, but there's a lot of absurd and comic, and sometimes annoying, and stuff that's going on. um, as an architect, you're part designer, part lawyer, part shrink, or psychiatrist. Depends.
I think
Yeah, depends how deranged the client is. Um, and you have to do, and you have to do all this at once. Um, so nothing totally prepares you
yeah,
for
no, it's,
professional life as an architect.
yeah, for what it truly means to be an architect. Yeah. And so we saw in your CV as well that you started to develop yourself as a BIM manager at some point of your career. When did you
Yeah.
hear about the BIM world the first time, and how did you perceive it first? Like, did you reject it? Did you thought it was maybe too
Uh,
much, or were you open to it?
well, actually, it was love from first sight for me personally. Yeah, I'll tell you how it happened. The thing is, when I first started, I think that the term BIM management, it wasn't ubiquitous. It wasn't as common as it is today. I started someone around 2013, I think. And I was working in an architecture office, and they decided they're going to move to Revit from AutoCAD. So I've been working for like 7 or 8 years as an architect with AutoCAD. And then these guys who had, they had enough vision and understanding of the industry and enough like they were open-minded.
It's
They,
important.
yeah, so they decided to move the whole office to Revit. Um, and this is always it's a bit of a shock for an office to be moved from CAD, like old generation, first generation CAD, to
Yeah.
BIM software. Um, and different people reacted in various ways. You know, the different workers of the office, different architects. Some people just hated it. I personally, you know, I saw it as an opportunity
Life
to,
gives you lemons, squeeze them.
yeah. So no, I didn't even think it was a lemon. I mean, you're going to be taught new software, which is supposed to be at that moment. I didn't know exactly what it was all about. Revit and BIM generally, I think it was the very beginning of BIM implementation in Israel. Some offices have been doing this before, but it was like, the beginning of this tidal wave that changed the industry in the last decade. So, so I totally saw it as an opportunity. Um, and uh, when you first, as an architect, when you start working with Revit, it's
I bet
it,
you enjoyed the sections.
totally, yeah.
That's
Uh, all the automation features they have, um, and the fact that you're 3D modeling and then you're getting the 2D drawings. You're just pulling it from the model, and everything is coordinated by definition. It just can't be otherwise because AutoCAD's been coordinating drawings manually.
Did you have a chance to work with the Dynamo or do some coding like Python, maybe using Revit API?
Yeah, so I'm an amateur coder, and when I started working in Swap, I'm gonna get to this a few minutes. Um, I was in a kind of a developer role, so I was writing a lot of code, and so yeah, when I started working with Revit, it became clear that many things that, as much as Revit is automated relatively to AutoCAD, it became clear that many things can be automated further and can be customized. And Dynamo, I think it became like a big deal somewhere around 2014, 15, something like that. That's about the time we started hearing about Dynamo on what's it called? Autodesk universities. Yeah. So it was like the hottest thing on Autodesk universities. Everybody were doing Dynamo, and there was a lot of material online, and it gave me a great boost. And actually, this visual programming interface, which is very, it's limited and it's primitive, but it gave me a foothold in the world of coding, in the world of programming, and it's a great tool to be exposed to some basic concepts of programming, data
So,
management loops and so on.
so around 2015, you were already a B manager, if I understand correct, right?
Yeah. Well, I became first I became like the BIM guy at my office. There's always one, right?
Yeah, it's always good to be the guy.
Yeah.
It's
So,
irreplaceable person.
yeah. So they didn't call it the BIM guy; they called it the Revit guy. But I became kind of the Revit guy, and a few years later, actually joined someone who helps and not only architects but structural engineers and MEP engineers as well. So she helps them to go from CAD to Revit. So I joined her, and I was teaching. I think I was very lucky to have this experience because I was actually teaching Revit for a couple of years to people, and it gave me a much deeper understanding of the program and of the conceptual framework of BIM, whether it's Revit or I had some experience with ArchiCAD as well. Yeah, so that's how it went.
Cool. And at some point we saw at your CV also worked at Tidar. Tidar
Yeah.
is quite a big deal here in Israel, of
Yes.
course. So you basically work from the side of the entrepreneur, I guess.
Yeah, and also I experienced the whole industry from viewpoint I wasn't familiar with, because when you represent the developer, you encounter a totally different set of problems. You're like looking at the whole thing in a totally different way. And architects, they're known for uh, thinking that they know it all.
Or
And
exaggerate.
yeah,
They probably did have thought more like financial, like how it's gonna be more efficient, how it's gonna be more cost efficient.
yeah.
Yeah, or
So coordination and construction, the side job, the assembly became a major part of my work. Just to make sure that it happens, to make sure that the model is coordinated. So I was sort of partially a BIM coordinator and a BIM manager who is forcing people, who is forcing the engineers and the architect, who's forcing everyone to work by the protocol and implement.
it can be hard here. I know.
Yeah, it's I got a lot of gray hair from this experience, but nevertheless, I learned a lot. And I don't think I could be doing half of the stuff I'm doing today without this particular experience of working with Tidhar, which is a major construction company in Israel, and they pride themselves with being technological. And indeed, they are, they are probably the most technological construction company in Israel at this moment, and they've been doing stuff that I don't think others have been. Certainly not in the previous decade or previous years.
Sounds amazing.
Did you have a chance maybe to work with some startups that Tidar is invested in or supports?
So no, I didn't have a chance to work with. There is a list of particular startups that are associated with Tidhar. I haven't been working with them, but I was a part of the innovation team in the BIM department of Tidhar. I was a part of it, and we've been constantly looking for new technologies and new companies and possible partners for technological development. So I learned a lot from this too. Um, I've really been lucky to be on this team because I think I got a very broad view of the whole construction tech industry, and all the players both in Israel and abroad, and I've been exposed to uh, a lot of companies and got a very good idea about what's going on, like what people do, um, what is needed most, and what kind of technological solutions are there in place at that particular moment. Yeah, so this was like the
Yeah,
technological management in Tidhar.
cool. Do you have like an example of like a specific technological sphere that it hard did that amazed you, like maybe for automation, the building process?
So a lot of prefab stuff. It is becoming a big deal in recent years. Some people are skeptical because the prefab world, it has a very problematic reputation because of things that were done in the past, especially in Israel. Especially in Israel, when you're talking about prefab, you're talking about low quality dwelling, the slum kind of neighborhoods. Um, However, maybe the technology back in the 60s or the 70s just wasn't ripe. And it looks like it's much more, it has matured.
It's more efficient. We don't see those old school cube buildings anymore,
Yeah,
even if they're
it's
prefab.
yeah, so it's much more customizable. I think the prefab solutions are much more flexible, and just the quality of the product is much higher. Back in the day when I was in Tidhar, Katera was a big thing. Uh,
I haven't heard
uh,
about it actually.
yeah, you haven't. So okay, so Katera, uh, they were into prefab design and construction. It was a huge company. I'm saying was, right, and again.
It is a huge company, I guess, still.
Yeah. In the past tense, I'm talking about them. So they were a SoftBank company. They were approached by SoftBank, and like some other companies, not to mention, they looked like they're going to be the future of construction, and especially of prefab. For various reasons, on which I'm certainly not an expert, for various reasons, it didn't happen. But they did leave a mark. They do have a certain legacy. Eventually, they went out of business, I think, like 2 years, 3 years ago.
So it is was.
Yeah. So the skepticism about prefab construction is,
Quality, I guess.
yeah, well, it has a point. It has a certain point. It's not an easy thing. It looks very easy, by the way. I think that,
Yeah, when the Chinese do that, when they rise their buildings from the factory, it looks easy, but
yes, I
maybe.
think that a lot of like construction technologists fall into this trap of that prefab looks like a low-hanging fruit. It looks very easy, and it's a very complicated thing, and like to do it properly, it's a very hard thing to achieve. So, but this was one of the most interesting things that I've seen as a technology person in Tidhar. Um,
Yeah.
and I've also seen a lot of automation solutions for the design stage, whether it's detailed design or conceptual design, feasibility studies. Um, so there was a lot of this stuff, and this is pretty much what I'm doing today, automating the design.
Yeah, I guess it's time we should get into our main topic, swap.
Yeah.
Swap, I saw your slogan is swap, radically increase productivity and profitability. That's your slogan, right?
Yep.
The company.
So swap is I've been in swap for a bit more than 2 years now. And I I went through the whole COVID thing with swap, which was very scary in the beginning. And I think that we kind of managed to leverage it to grow. It resulted in growth eventually, for us at least. And I joined in an early stage, like very early stage. I think it was a bunch of like 6 or 7 people, maybe 8.
When was it founded?
About 3 years ago.
About 3 years ago. Very young.
Yeah, it's a young company. Nevertheless, now we have somewhere between 30 and 40 people. We have grown, and we're doing some, the kind of stuff I wouldn't believe is possible, to be honest.
It looked in the site that it's like impossible that you are capable of basically replacing the architect, the other designers, and like fabricate a building from out of nothing.
Yeah, so the replacing the architect thing, it has to be addressed, because I don't think that's our goal. I don't think that's what we do. First of all, we address the kind of the kind of projects, the class of projects that is regular and repetitive enough to be automated, which is, to be honest, it's like, maybe 90% of construction. It's a lot.
Yeah, but it's I guess it's mostly like warehouses and commercial buildings, and it's more or less residential, or is it also?
Well, yeah, that's not accurate, because you do have like logistics centers, which are sort of copy-paste buildings. They're just copied and pasted into different sites as they are. Now, residential projects, they are not identical. They're not identical, and they make for a pretty complex algorithmic problem. However, they are similar and identical. It's not the same thing. The underlying, the deep logic behind residential projects, even though they are very site specific, etc., but the deep logic of residential projects is, it can be structured. It can be structured, and to the point of addressing most of the residential projects, not all of them, but again, like 90%. It's yeah, it's a number that keeps repeating. I keep saying 90% about all kind of stuff, and that's how it goes, because like 90% of the stuff can be automated. There's other 10% that would be a problem. For example, a swap wouldn't do the next Guggenheim Museum. That's not what we do. So landmarks and probably certain types of private villas, neat client, the custom-made projects.
Do you have maybe like an example of a project that was designed fully by swap and build, or is there such thing here yet? Because I know you're very young, so
yeah, well, 3
construction
years.
project is
Yeah.
basically 4 years.
3 years is 3 years. Yeah, it's not enough time to actually build a project, even in like classic
Yeah.
architecture bureau. By the way, as an architect, I don't think that you get to work, like it's, rarely you get to work on a project from the very beginning till the end. You're like working for 3 or 4 or 5 or I don't know, 7 years in an office, and you only do like parts of a project. You do the beginning, or you do the middle, or you do the end. It's very rare for an architect to go through whole cycles. So projects take a lot of time. But we do cooperate. We do work with certain developers and certain architects, both in Israel and abroad. Most of our clients are in the US, in Europe, in Asia. So we are exposed to a great variety of standards,
Yeah.
be it residential.
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually, how the standards differ from each country. Like, which one is probably the most easiest to build? What do you think? Like regulation-wise, building-wise, because here
Well,
it is a regulation hard.
yeah, I think, well, the easiest ones to build are not necessarily the ones that have the simplest geometry. The easiest to automate are the ones who have a clear set of rules. And in Israel, it's not exactly the case, every developer gets all kind of exceptions and bends the rule as much as they can. So the easiest ones are those where there is structured data about regulations. In the US, they've made some major steps towards this in certain states. So it makes automation easier, and it enables automation. And seeing, especially in the residential field, seeing a lot of standards that gives you both, procedurally, like algorithmically, it gives you a very interesting insight into different sets of rules. Like what they have a lot in common, and they have differences, and like what parts of those different projects can be treated all the same, and what parts have to be treated differently. So that's an interesting, like, engineering, computer science problem.
Well, I guess at least the concrete is still concrete, the steel is still steel, the windows are still windows in all the countries. That's the
well, there's
that's
laminated
the
wood as well, in North America mostly. But yeah, concrete is still concrete, as far as I know.
Yeah. So let's talk deeply more about Swap. What kind of different solutions are you offering to your clients as part of the automation? So you can offer them architectural, conceptual design, and together fit the structure and the map design as well.
All
So
right.
basically, I'm just interested in how much of it do you automate? Do you give a design that basically is detailed to the sprinkler under the beam? Like, what's the abilities of Swap? I'm just curious about it.
Right. So we do have a very powerful feasibility study tool, which with which the client can run possible solutions for certain sites. But our main focus is on automating construction documents, automating the drudgery. Because the conceptual phase, the feasibility studies, they don't take that much time.
Said he wants that. That's what
Yeah.
he gets.
That's not the hard part. And getting back to not competing with architects, rather than enabling them, we are saving the drudgery. We are saving the technical work, and the construction documents the documentation and the drawings and the drafting, it can take up to seriously 90%, again, 90% of the time. So this is the part we want to automate. And sort of, free up architects for conceptual, high-level conceptual work rather than quantity takeoffs and such.
Do you also take the challenge to automate efficiency? Like, for example, do you efficiate the HVAC systems from like cost-wise? Do you also tackle these issues?
Okay, so the efficiency. Algorithms can, optimize things faster, faster and in a more efficient way than people can. I mean, we sort of can mathematically go through a lot of solutions and find the best, like optimization for particular goals. A building can be optimized for being the cheapest possible project, or like the most luxurious, or with the best view, or so you set your own goals when you optimize projects. And another interesting thing is that automating the creation of a project with all the systems, like MEP and structural systems included, is part of the deal, because when you only address a certain set of issues in the design process, those issues are very hard to solve, because design is an iterative project, and later decisions, they have impact on earlier stages. So having this algorithmic sort of God view on the project, with all its details and with all its systems right from the start, this is where the power of swap lies, among other things. And having a set of construction documents adjusted to a certain standard at the click of a button, pretty much. That's our goal.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I think it's very useful for the entrepreneurs to know how much do they need to take into consideration the project. Like, if they need a sprinkler system in their own building, like, do they need the how do you say it? There's not the word, with the smoke. The smoke boosters. Yeah, it's good for them to know like all their options, how to optimize it, and basically to know all the knowledge about their project from the beginning and not be surprised about the middle.
Yeah, exactly. So they can have a pretty accurate assessment of how much it's how much the whole project is going to cost, and they can, make decisions. They can make business decisions based on accurate data instead of waiting for many design iterations, or just making leaps of faith the way they're doing today. To just so as an architect, I've been approached many times by developers. They say like, give me some sketch. Just don't put too much time into this. They're not willing to pay for this. Just give me a sketch. But then they want you to
redo it 20 times.
Well, first, yes, they want you to do it again and again, and then they want this very preliminary and basic sketch. They want you to to promise that the quantities and the areas, and so they want certainty. So they're asking you, okay, so what's your certainty about this sketch? Is it like 90%? You can't. You can't throw a number. No, it's not 90%. It's uncertain. That's what I can say. But they go on with it as a basis for the project and for their financial calculations and for the budget. And then it turns out not to be accurate.
Because it didn't take into consideration the structural engineer, the plumbing engineer, the rest of them.
It was just a concept, of course. Yeah.
So maybe a little bit of a lighter question.
Sure.
I'm from the construction world. Victor here is from the high-tech world.
Yeah.
So and Swap is basically a high-tech company, right?
We're a tech company.
Tech company.
We're a tech company, and I think that I'm very privileged to be in a certain position, in a certain role that really combines, you know, the two departments, because we do have architects as product people, you know, who have the domain knowledge, and we have professional developers and mathematicians and algorithm designers, and someone has to kind of uh, connect.
Coordinate.
Yeah, connect these two, and I think I've been lucky to be exposed to many different aspects of this industry and of this profession, to be in this position of like there's there's no name for it even. You know?
Yeah. Is it much different from the architectural office environment and the tech environment? Is there like a big difference between them?
Absolutely, yes, a huge difference. You know, the optimism we have,
Yeah.
and
The optimism is the goal, and the design
yeah,
is
things are not
correct.
things are not taken for granted, you know, because working in the traditional industry, whether it's architecture or anything else, people are just taking pre-existing conditions for granted. Like that's how it works, and that's how it's been working for ages, and there's nothing to be done about it, and you just have to, you know, to adapt. And that's not how it goes in the tech industry. So we're having fun every step of the way, seriously.
Cool. And it's probably fun to see the product develop and develop from like the beginning until now.
A question which I ask all our guests, like, do you have an advice for a tech person like me? How can I get deeper into like into the construction world, like in more experience, or to understand in a better way all the problems that you have on a daily basis?
Well, first, I think the best advice I could give is go to a construction site.
Yeah,
Like,
wear a helmet, take a hammer.
yeah, go to a construction
And,
site. And by the way, this is that's an advice for architects as well. They don't do that enough. Absolutely. So this is one of the things I learned in the importance of, I mean, Tithar. Go to the job site, and it will clarify a lot of stuff, like why things are being done the way they are being done in the design phase, and you know, the code, the like your lines of code, like what kind of impact they have in the real world. So so maybe this is like, you know, the coolest thing you could do. But there's also aspects of you know, permits of authorities. So just make sure you have an encounter with all of those players, stakeholders. Uh,
yeah, interesting. Good advice, Victor. Are you ready to go to the site?
I also I already bought a helmet. Okay, so the next step is actually to do the move and to go to the construction site.
yeah, so you find like a big and interesting construction site, and it's going to be interesting for sure. I mean, it's fascinating to see the work in progress, you know, on the job site.
Thank you. That's
Thousands of thousands of men running. So okay, maybe we'll do our next podcast from the construction site. We'll think about it.
Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Nice. So, do you have anything more that you want to tell us about Swap, like about the process, about the working cells? So you have also headquarters in Texas, which sounds quite
Yeah,
cool.
so yeah, we've been Tel Aviv based up until now, and yeah, that's true. We're now starting something in Texas. I can't give a lot of details, but Texas as a state is just, you know, it's like a huge sandbox experimenting, and the regulation in Texas in terms of construction is not just construction probably, but it's very relaxed. So things can be tested and tried, and they're pretty open-minded. Texas, I think there's um, a lot of people moving into Texas from other states, so the population grows, and a lot of requirement for new dwelling, and it's a very interesting place to be at right now. So we're not the only ones, by the way, like not the only Israeli company.
Also German, if you know about them.
Yes, of course. Yes, they're good friends. They're good friends, and exactly.
Oh, cool.
They've also been to Texas. Yeah.
I saw as well at your site that you're trying to put impact on the grid building part side, like energy efficiency, grid building, all the save the environment kind of things. Is it a priority at Swap?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So, and it's not, it's not a separate issue. It's just, it's a design.
It's a part of design.
Yes, it's just part of it's a design constraint, just like any other, and it's becoming increasingly important for very good reasons.
Yeah.
And we make sure that everything we produce is compatible with with energy efficiency requirements and so on.
Yeah, so like a cool model at your site and the demo, there's like an energy efficiency model.
Yeah.
Like there's like a thermic calculation from the sub. I mean,
Yeah,
I know it's from Beam and Revit, but it's a cool thing to incorporate in your product.
Yes, all included. Absolutely.
Nice. Would you like to speak about other features that you offer? Or maybe happy clients or good feedback that you received?
Well, the feedback we get from partners is always like, they say it's too good to be true. It's something we just keep hearing again and again and again. And it's kind of neat, to see people exposed for the very first time. People who, most of them, a lot of like older generation architects, and for many of them, it's like the first time they encounter state-of-the-art AI technology dealing with the stuff, and so the reactions are ecstatic sometimes, and it's pretty cool. And to be honest, I've been for almost 2.5 years in Swap, and the stuff I keep seeing is like, well, I wouldn't believe like 2 years ago that it would be possible, but nevertheless it happens. And so you just you start believing in it.
But back in 2005, it was like all imaginary if you thought about it now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Great to see how technology changes are very old school, old-fashioned world.
Yeah. So there's some react with a certain degree of suspicion as well.
Maybe they're afraid that they're going to be replaced, but no. But I think like what's beautiful about your project, you maybe automate some processes, but it makes like the people who work in the field like be more professional, be more what's the word? It makes them be more professional because they're afraid maybe technology will replace them. I'm not saying that you're replacing people, but I'm just saying that to make people more professional and be more precise and be more detailed, because they don't need to do all the hard labor of the draft.
Yeah, well, first of all, they can be sure that everything is coordinated like top notch, 100% coordinated. They can be sure, and the developer can be certain that the estimations, the cost estimated, the budget estimations have been accurate. So when everybody like get to the construction site, things just assembled in a more relaxed and efficient and less stressful way. So I do believe, that we have a certain impact on this.
Great. Great, really sounds great. When you finish building like a swap building from the beginning to end, you had to send this email. We gotta see it. I'm so curious about
Yeah,
it.
sure. Yeah, sure. We'll keep in touch. We have some projects and we have a lot of material to show.
Great.
So
Would you like to share it or
no, not now,
not
not,
this time?
not on the podcast,
Next time.
unfortunately. Yeah, but yeah, if you guys want to see some stuff, no problem. We'll do that.
I think we covered most of the things, right?
Yes, it was a really great pleasure. Also, you gave me a feeling that the construction world is no more so conservative as everybody thinks. Like it gave me a lot of like hope and energy, because I see people in the industry that like innovation and really open to innovation. And actually, you're part of the innovation.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Nice. I guess we'll summarize it, right? Thanks for having you, Ilia. Thanks for being here with us, Ilia.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
Friday afternoon. We had a pleasure talking to you and hearing about Swap. It sounds amazing, looks amazing, and we wish you the best of luck in your project. And it's fun to talk to people who enjoy construction and are passionate about it.
Yeah, it's possible. It's a thing that can be enjoyed under certain circumstances. Sure, guys. Thank you for having me. And all right, cheers. Bye bye.
Yeah.